Hi, I'm Maya Trpevska from Integrated PeopleSolutions. I'm here as a HR consultant to show you the ropes on the Online Prosperity Show. What we'll get to introduce or learn in today's session would be about people, HR, culture, and compliance. So if you want to listen in, dial in now.
Now, I've got a question for you. Have you ever danced your way into an HR career? Well, our guest today did just that. I want to welcome you to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your number one destination where coaches, consultants, and service-based business owners actually discover the human stories behind business success. And today, we're going to be stepping into the polished world of HR. But before we jump into that, my name is Taruvinga, and I'll be your host today. And I've never really been around a lot of HR people, just simply because, one, I never really lasted in my jobs, and two, if I was ever be summoned to an HR department, that was me getting fired. But today, we're going to be stepping into the polished HR title and the vibrant life of Maya Trpevska. Now, Maya, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Prosper. Great chatting to you today.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't wait because I was practicing how to say your last name for the whole week. I couldn't wait to get you on the show.
Great to be here.
Fantastic.
Mr. Taruvinga.
Now, Maya is the business partner at Integrated PeopleSolutions. And I don't want the title or the professional accolades that are going to come after this to fool you, right? This isn't just one of those compliance checklists or maybe policy templates or anything to do with the whole boring world of HR as you know it. This is about people at their core. See, we're going to be navigating real challenges, tough conversations, and also massive organizational shifts, and while making workplace actually human again. And yes, believe it or not, Maya's journey actually started with folk dancing. I can't wait to jump into this little tidbit of information here. And so from the rhythm of traditional steps to the beat of corporate change, Maya's story is anything but linear. So I could go on and on because me and Maya actually, know each other from places she's probably going to talk about. But I'm just excited to have Maya on the show today. So today we're going to be discovering the not so obvious link between her past and the corporate present that she now has. And we'll also learn how Maya helps businesses solve problems before they become legal issues. Okay. And not a lot of people want to end up in court because they just didn't do the right thing. And you will be able to hear how you might be approaching HR wrong and what you could do instead. So strap in, because somewhere in this story, there's your story too. I want you to grab a coffee, lean in, and see where you actually resonate. And Maya, I could go on and on, talk about things I'm not even qualified about. Take us a little bit back. What kind of a kid were you? And did HR even cross your mind back then?
Well, come to think of it, Prosper, as you were talking, I was thinking about my journey in folk dancing is where it all started. Yes, I was a little Macedonian dancer in the suburbs of Melbourne. Going through discipline actually is one of the things when you are dancing is an important part of that, and also about having fun. And HR is just that at the same time. So you're disciplined to do the right steps, making sure you've got the right people that you're dancing with, if you want to call it that, or on the bus, but also making sure you're all going the same way and in a formation. So it does really summarize it up, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I like that. Discipline and fun all in the same sentence. It's not every day that you get to hear that, especially from somebody who works in like a compliance type position. Now, by discipline, what are you talking about? Is it you showing up for practice? Is you listening to your elders? Or what sort of discipline were you expected to show as a kid?
Well, the discipline of, I guess, learning instructions is probably one to really hone in on and focus on now that we've brought it up. Essentially looking at you're in a group of people, as at work, you're in a group of people. What kind of priorities or steps does everyone choose to take? Very much similar with work, but also looking at who is the leader of the group and following that lead and making sure we're all on the right space, right focus, right, goal orientated. And so they all do actually align very similarly together.
Absolutely. Now, it's quite interesting that you would have maybe chosen or fallen into folk dancing. Was that, as you have mentioned, a Macedonian sort of cultural thing? And was that an expectation from the parents, or did you actually volunteer to
Enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah, we actually enjoyed it. I always actually wanted to be a ballroom dancer.
Right.
But I never eventuated in that, interestingly enough. So I kept on dancing, folk dancing.
Absolutely. And obviously, there's a lot of culture involved in that. What's your connection to this type of dance?
Well, being a Macedonian background, obviously, is one of the things that you get into it. But you was the connections, the growth, small community in Australia, like as you are from a small African community in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. That was very much the Macedonian community back in the 80s and 90s. So that was a way to connect, how family connected, how you grew the connections as well. More like what we do now, even in our professional and personal life. So we've only got a couple of family members in Melbourne, whereas the rest are overseas or in New South Wales for our family. So the culture and community was important.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why I asked you that question, because community seems to be, a very central theme in what you went on and did and what it is that you're actually doing and in the places that I actually know you from. Now, obviously, from this girl that was doing all this folk dancing, obviously you grew up. Walk us through what it was like, growing up as a young Macedonian woman who had that discipline plus that cultural sort of look and feel in a world like Australia.
Well, it was quite interesting. So as we keep talking back to discipline, and I think you and me have mentioned that a couple of times, even off air, is more about making sure that you're doing the right thing or working towards doing the right thing. You can't always be 100% in everything that you do, but it's how you help get there, or what's your mindset like. In the world of HR, yes, we all want to achieve perfect, but in realistic senses, how frequent would that be? And asking business owners, for example, to be 100% all the time, we know that's not as humanly possible to ensure all the compliance, but as long as we're working towards it. So even from a folk to growing up to my career or trajectory towards that, it's about what can you do better? What is that 1% that you did better than yesterday? And figuring out where you want to go and what you want to do was quite important for me growing up. Mum always mentioned, why don't you do something businessy or being an accountant? You would know I'm not great with numbers. Not my favorite thing, but I have to learn it and I have to do it. But essentially, and then I fell in love with one of my job networks that I used to work at. So I volunteered while I was in high school, a couple of hours a week at a job network agency. And I met the HR manager there, and she was absolutely amazing in terms of her education, her communication, guiding the rest of the business. And that was what pushed me to do HR as a major in my degree.
Absolutely. And it's always the people that you come across, in life that then obviously steer you into the right direction. And, you did mention mom wanted you to do something in the accounting or something businessy. What is her background, so that we can have an understanding of why she was sort of pushing you to that?
Mum's background's been more in men's clothing line and manufacturing of men's clothing. But as you know, as you would know, coming to Australia at a young age, with mum and dad had two kids coming from overseas. I was barely 6 months old coming to Australia. And they only had, as they would tell you, a suitcase on their back and trying to find work and trying to develop yourself in the world of Australia. So realistically, mum was lucky enough to be quite smart in terms of the administration, the operational perspective. She runs a men's clothing product line and does all the purchasing for them. So she is in business as well, but not necessarily in accounting or anything like that, but she just said, you need to focus and study on business.
Now, obviously, coming from a different cultural sort of background, was there any expectation for you to actually do well and excel and maybe make something of yourself?
Yes. So I think with every parent, they're going to do that regardless of being European or not. I think we all want to do better for the next generation. And the next and the next. So they would always want you to be something and do something, but they wouldn't discipline you should you not have. But because our drive and career and our charisma wanting to do a lot more, we've started growing and developing ourselves.
Absolutely. And when you stumbled into HR and, you obviously met that lady who showed you what was possible and went on and did your own degree, was there a pivotal moment when you actually realized, you know what, this is it. I want to work with people and this is what I'm going to be doing?
Well, interestingly enough, so as I was doing the job network and doing high school at the same time, I would not say I was the smartest in the room, but I was determined. I think out of year 12, there was possibly about 5 or 6 people that ended up doing HR and similarly into the same university. And I always say that I'm street smart rather than book smart. And they were much more book smart than I was. But however, out of, I think, all of them, only 2 of us finished our degrees. So me being the street smart person and one book smart person. It was, from me, it was what's the emotional journey? How do I connect with people? Yes, the compliance comes with it, but it's more about what can we do to help and support and grow our networks, our team, and really, improve. HR is almost like looking at how we're improving every day, making sure we're as compliant as can be. And, in an idealistic world, yes, I would love everyone to be 100% compliant. But in the reality, that is what are we doing as HR representatives or businesses that are out there, consultants that are out there to help businesses grow.
Absolutely. You see, you did mention, you only just need to do 1% better earlier on. And I feel like that's pretty much how people grow. And if you do that every single day, you are now 365% better, if that's even a word.
Yes.
Now with HR, there's often that tightrope of, you have to walk between, the business needs and also human needs and things of that nature. Has there been like a challenging situation that you've had to actually, figure out what to navigate towards in your career so far?
Yeah, so I can tell you plenty, but we only have a short amount of time. But essentially, consulting to different types of businesses. So Integrators People Solutions has come from various different industry experiences, and essentially one of the biggest challenges. So I've worked in your banking and finance, your manufacturing, your hospitality, your retail, but the biggest challenge has been ones where businesses that have multiple different types of staff. So I've worked for a company that worked in the prison environments, for example, and having to be so specific in the way you do things with them is one thing. So that's its own challenge. But then they had 4 different position types. So they had electricians, plumbers, they had carpenters, and they just had general hands, and all 4 were different awards. So navigating and understanding how those particular things happen, and that's one client. That's normally 1 or 2 clients that have that. But when you've got one that's got 4 different awards, for example, and then you've got the added layer of having to be in a prison environment, that's got its own challenge. Yeah, so there's plenty of things like that, but there's always the hardest ones that for business owners are the what do I pay them? And then how do I pay them? And then I think that's where the question generally stems from. Am I paying them correctly? I've had businesses where they thought 35 hours was full time. But on today's day and age, we know an average full time employee is working an average of 38 hours. So and realizing, oh wow, we've could have been potentially short paying people 3 hours over X amount of years. And how do business owners learn that? They don't even know it unless someone picks it up and lets them know about it.
Absolutely. And now it becomes a bill that they need to look after, and but how do you build trust? Because so many people just think HR is just paperwork, and it's just stuff that needs to be done and things like that. But how do you then build trust with businesses so that they actually integrate your services and their people to work with you, so that they don't only need you when things go wrong, all right? Because when then they have to pay that discrepancy of 3 hours over X amount of years, that's a long time for somebody to not have been doing the right thing.
Yes. So in terms of, I guess, where business owners can come in, or leaders that are looking from a HR space, the relationship, like you said, is really important. So I always want to get to know the person before I want to even get to know their business. That's really important about building the trust, the relationship with that person, understanding them over a cup of coffee or a phone call, so you can't always meet everyone face to face all the time, but essentially, as I like to say, there's old school of thought and there's new school of thought. The traditional way of meeting people face to face is really important because that shows the commitment of giving them time. And then in turn, that builds trust. So there's that component. And then it's talking to the client or the customer about the potential risks, not letting them know, hey, I mean, yes, in instances you might say, look, this is a risky situation, but it's educating them before telling them. If it was, for example, the situation of a proposed underpayment, say, look, understanding that this is something that you may have been doing for X amount of years, but are you aware of the most recent changes, or this has been a change to legislation? Because they might not be made aware of changes in their business. We know as an average, as a HR practitioner, every July generally they have award increases. Now, do business owners know that? And sometimes they do them in March. How are they supposed to know? So having someone that you can trust or seek guidance from, that's really important.
Absolutely. Now, you have mentioned there's always these constant changes that obviously the business owners might not be able to keep on top of. How have you been able to manage that? And especially the fact that these changes are rapidly coming through. and it might be difficult for some other people to stay on top of it. How do you manage that side of your work?
We all know there's ChatGPT, so that's not where you want to go first. So make that clear. But it's really important to be subscribed to HR. For example, for me, I'm subscribed to HR networking groups. I'm a part of ARI, Australian Human Resource Institute, so I get frequent updates from there. I've also in another group that provides updates as well from legal firms. That's really important to stay abreast out of that. And also Fair Work. I mean, every worker or employer can subscribe to the Fair Work updates as well. So it's, if you've got any staff, that's a little tip to have there. And not just that one, but also the WorkSafe one. They're just subscriptions that come. You don't have to pay for them, and they're newsletters or updates just to let you know regarding your industry.
See, and you just raised an important fact, because the last 5 years have just been topsy-turvy, especially when it comes to business and just the way people engage with the workforce and things of that nature. Has there been any sort of major changes that some people might not even realize have come about when it comes to maybe allowing people to work from an outside premise than where they're supposed to be working? Because that's the one thing that I kind of find a lot of people grappling with and don't know how to actually handle it and things of that nature.
Well, since COVID, working from home is a big component of people's lives, isn't it? It's almost like a terms and conditions now as part of, when I do a lot of recruitment, some of the conversations is this position from the office or is it a remote situation? And some instances, some people are living on the other side of town, but it's about being realistic. Obviously, being clear in your job ads is first and foremost. But then if you've got someone that's already employed with you and has been so used to and accustomed to the working from home arrangement, that conversation, I mean, I know that there's had a lot of talks about bringing people back, but it's what kind of conversations and what kind of culture have you set within your business is really important. But the question you asked is more about more recent changes in legislation. Now, the last couple of years, there's had the family and domestic violence leave. Now, I'm not sure how much business owners are aware of that, but that is now a paid extra leave that is on top of your leave requirements. Traditionally, you would have your annual leave, your sick leave, and your long service if they're a permanent employee. But now this family and domestic violence leave has got paid terms for both permanent and casual workers. So that's a big one that you want to have a look at. Interestingly enough, there's another one that's been trying to get in a lot of businesses, but especially a lot of union sites, is trying to get more female workers in the workforce and introducing menopausal leave. But it's not legislated. But there's these kind of things that businesses don't really realize, but it's not until whether, if you're working for a building and construction company or you're tendering for government, government projects, they're the kind of things that the union sites actually want to see in there.
Absolutely. You see, now when it comes to things like that, there's a fine line, between knowing what to say and how to say it to to people. When it comes to things like that, you're talking menopause and things like that. Is there any training that you offer business owners so that they maybe don't ask unlawful questions, which might end up becoming a pitfall, for many employers, not knowing, whether they're stepping their boundaries or things like that? Because somebody's bound to ask, why do you need that time off, that much time off, and things like that. And maybe it's not a good question to ask.
Yeah, so part of my services is engaging a client. There's a couple of options that I can do for the client. So I do a free HR audit that touches on some kind of questions, but my full paid HR audit does step into those kind of discriminatory questions Are you aware that you can't ask certain questions, whether someone's got kids in an interview, or are you married, or what shoe size are you, or anything like that? You can't actually ask those questions unless it's an inherent requirement of the role. So people don't know whether they can and can't say those things. So I do cover it off as part of my checklist in the audit. But then from there, I look at educating how can they better understand those kind of situations that pop up. And obviously part of my services is then to help and guide them through that process.
Absolutely. See, there's quite a lot of stuff that I don't know, maybe other people would know, but as an employer, you really need to know most of those things. And with the way our world is now wired, you know what I mean? We're getting information from other countries, and the culture is just getting diluted by other expectations. There's bound to be conflicts at a workplace, which obviously sometimes it just erupts. Maybe do you have a process or a way that you help employers resolve things that, or issues of that sort of nature while maintaining a legal and ethic, standard around their business?
Yes. One thing I pride myself on is performance counselling and performance management, all the way through to the end of employment. I really look after the whole employment life cycle, but my big focus is on how to do better and making sure, how do we have those tough conversations so they become more simplified? Why are they so tough? Is it because it's been brewing and then it's all evaporated? And now it's, like the teapot and the kettle. Here's my sprout. They've had enough, and then someone might, had enough, and then they might find that challenging. One thing I love doing is coaching and guiding and supporting the leaders and the managers on, hey, let's show you how to performance manage someone. Let's show you how to do performance review. And of course, be there and guide them and support them doing it or help do it for them. But it's, if I'm always going to be doing it for them, how are they going to learn? So when I'm doing a disciplinary process, for example, someone hasn't been meeting the sales KPIs, or someone's been yelling at another person, or the got a situation where one of the managers is not meeting the expectations, but we're not talking to that manager about that expectations. And I keep saying, well, why are we not having that conversation? Is it because you're not feeling comfortable in talking to them about that, or you can't articulate it? Let me help you articulate the best way to do it while minimizing their risk. So rather than saying, hey, Joe Blow, you're not doing a great job. Okay, how can we explain that in, sometimes people curse and say other things, but when they're talking to their staff. But again, it's how do we then educate that person? Hey, just to let you know, we've got some concerns. We'd like to catch up with you, or hey, want to provide you with some training. Obviously, there's things in between that we need to get through before we get to there, but it's essentially, okay, talking through, well, why haven't they been a good manager? Because the team's complaining, or because the suppliers are complaining, whatever the case may be, gather that information. And then how does that reflect to the company policies or values or their goals? And if we're shying away from them, how do we bring them back? Or how have they not been following? And then show them, explain it to them, give them an opportunity. It's quite quickly, I've got one gentleman, when I started working for this client, was irate, thought HR was the big bad wolf, and that's the typical sense of what a HR person does. But it's not. Like, we're so much more than that. We're such loving and compassionate people, as I'd like to say. And I always like to do the fun stuff. Yes, the challenging stuff is going to come up, but it's how do you then turn that into a positive relationship? So that particular person came in and was so unhappy that a HR person had started to help them. But through guiding, talking to them, I wouldn't say befriending them, but also understanding the language that they speak. And if they're speaking to you in semi-slang, engage in that, but then also bring them back to grow them in terms of how they respond after that. And at the end, I've had a happy person, and they can't thank me enough in terms when my other counterpart that's been helping out in the situation, they said, without you, this wouldn't have happened. And you see from someone so unhappy to happy, you can see the little, what do you call it? The little happiness,
The happiness dial.
sling going over, dialogue going on. And that's what I do. I have a little, how are people's feeling? It's literally almost like a happiness wheel, and they just flick it and they'll say, oh, I'm feeling this way today. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm actually feeling this. So, and quite 9 times out of 10, it's quite positive.
Fantastic, and congratulations on that. So in a way, you literally end up becoming like a coach or counselor to some of these people, because they come to you with all these obviously HR issues, but then you end up really walking them through and putting them on the straight and narrow. So in a typical day, what's a typical day for an HR consultant like yourself like?
It will never be the same. You can go from, I spent 80% of my time recruiting today, a little bit of making sure people are on the right awards and classifications, but then it was checking in on someone's work cover situation.
Wow.
All the way through to, what else did I do today? There was a lot of meetings, catching up, performance reviews, a bit of, part of the recruitment, phone interviews and actually interviews. So that could be today, and you might plan to do a lot more create new policies. For example, I might be working on a tender for a person, and they said, oh, actually, I don't have this HR policy in play, or my business doesn't do half of these. What do I need to do to actually start being compliant and put my business forward? So helping them create that. So it could be moving from there. I mean, it might be just planning what an extra benefit is for the company, finding a way to be a part of the employee value proposition. Why do people want to come and work for that particular company? So creating some options. So whether it's free car parking, the situation where there's had free PPE in terms of to a certain dollar value, if you're working in a manufacturing environment, having some glasses that have got prescriptions, is the company willing to put money towards that? Some people want health insurance. So it depends on the company. It's not always just going to be behind the scene and on the screen typing away. There's so much more to what we do.
Absolutely.
Coaching, leading, developing. You're an all-rounder.
Absolutely. And you're heavily involved in, your local networking. Now, what does this say about, how you view community and pretty much learning in business? Because this sort of encompasses who you are as a person and the connections that you afford your clients.
Yeah, look, I think connections are really important. As you know, I'm part of a local networking group with yourself. And, I love talking to people, talking about how you go in for one thing and you get so much more from it. You get a family, you get a community, you get people that you can count on, like, know, and trust. Blog writing is one thing about providing people with information and insight about what a person or a business does, but it's really about educating. Not only, the traditional HR person in a company might only do policies, and another person might do comp and ben, but being an all-round consultant and someone you can't just be one thing. You have to know business strategy. You have to know the strategic alignment that the business is planning to do. You have to be forward thinking, okay, what's our labor costs for 2027? How can I grow my business? as well. So you're always thinking about how do you connect with business owners or managers or leaders. So when you're writing, whether it's articles or you're writing content, or, sometimes we have a prosper in our life that helps us do our websites and marketing, but then there's instances where businesses don't have that. But it's about how do then you educate, and then educate the people that are doing the work for you behind the scenes to understand, hey, this is the world of HR and this is what my business strategy is, to then be able to share the blogs and share the articles and share the information to the web.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, you're dealing with all this, and you're fully integrated into people's businesses. Obviously, the people, the profits, every aspect of them, and how they actually operate. What's the one thing that a lot of business owners get wrong about building a high performing team?
They have the wrong people on the bus.
Mm.
That's the biggest thing. They hire out of fear. Um, I like to say my recruitment rate is pretty good. And if I provide recommendation to an employer, say, look, this is a short-term fix for a long-term solution that you need. And if that's the way you go because you're hiring just because you don't want to go through that recruitment phase again, the biggest waste of resources or investment is hiring the wrong person. We all know, or generally business owners would know, if you hire the one person and then you let them go and then you rehire, that's 3 to 5 times more expensive than if you recruited the right way. So don't be afraid that you posted a job ad and you didn't get the hits. Maybe it was your job ad. Maybe it was you're not communicating effectively to the right audience. You're probably trying to put too much into one ad. That's where it all starts. Then you find the right person, and then it's also how you interview them. They're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. So if you're not feeling the love or feeling the connection between that person, don't hire them. And be okay to then repost the job ad out and reinvest in it. That's where the best solution comes from. And I think, that's where the culture then gets defined. And that's where, as a business, you keep on improving. If you don't start, that's where it can all come down from. Also, the other thing is if a manager's not willing to make change. Change is a big part of everyday life today. If you are not in the business of change, whether it's your customer, whether it's your product, whether it's your style, you've got to appeal to the audience. If you and I have a little chuckle all the time about the way I sometimes present myself is an important part, right? So we know we have our off-the-cuff video calls or phone calls. You'll get the plain old Maya, and then there's the one that goes out and sometimes has to present in a different manner. It's depends on what your customers need. So, I am the product and the service. If I went into a manufacturing company with a full suit and a tie, how am I going to get a customer's attention? And then, and if I'm not wearing the correct PPE and going in there, if I'm going in thongs and, not caring about clothes, long pants, or depends on the environment or the industry. So that could also affect the way that you present your service, for example. But obviously it's different for people that have a product. They've got a tangible item. So, what's the quality like? Who's helping sell that? What's that strategy? How are we as HR people helping making sure those right people are onboarded and know the right thing? So we become teachers. I always say we're the unqualified of a lot of other things, but we're qualified in HR.
I like that. And if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, oh, I should reach out to Maya and maybe get integrated, where would they go on the internet, or how can they get a hold of you?
Yes, we have an email and we've also got a website, so integratedpeoplesolutions.com.au. And we've also got an email address, hr@integratedpeoplesolutions.com.au. Be careful how you spell integrated. And phone number as well. So 0370761567.
Absolutely.
And we're also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Definitely, we'll be putting all those links in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey. Now, Maya, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. And I mean, your life story, your experience, and how you've put it all together, it's all just a nice symphony and a nice dance. And it really shows, why dancing was an allure to you in a pastime. But looking back to maybe when you started and things like that, what sort of advice would you give to an aspiring HR professional, especially in Australia, and maybe somebody who's getting started on their journey to become an expert like yourself?
Learn. They need to learn. And you're not going to be an expert at everything. You're going to take time to learn the information, and you learn from each obviously situation that you're in. But I'd always wish that I did certain things sooner. So don't be afraid to take the bullet. It doesn't matter what industry you're in or what profession you're in. If you have a dream or a passion, follow it. And as from a HR space, don't be afraid to be connected, and don't be afraid to tell people, hey, I've identified that's not the right thing. One thing I always tell myself off is, before I loved health and safety, was because part of HR has the safe component of every healthy workplace, but was how many people leave the filing cabinet drawers open? So many people. They don't see that that's a health and safety issue. But then that health and safety issue could potentially become an issue for the HR department. We all know a lot of things are common sense. Jaywalking. We cross the road when we don't think about it. Everything HR stems from, and everything we do, we learn it as we're kids. When we're at school, the teacher tells us we need to do our times tables. That's doing your induction or onboarding. Then you need to do your tests. That's part of your policies and checking what you know, right? Then you're doing your sport, you're physically working. So there's all these things that stem from us being educated. When you're speeding on the road, you get a fine. That's your verbal warning or your formal written warning.
I like that.
You go to court, that could be your final written warning. There's all these different terminologies. So teaching the next generation or the next HR people, just think about it like that. How is it an easy way for you to explain it to your clients or your customers or the future who you're talking to?
So it's not just human resources, it's actually human relationships. It's literally learning how to live and survive in this world that we live in, right? And everything else that comes along with it. Now, this has been fun, but I still want to know, now that you set yourself on this trajectory, on this road, what's next? What can people expect from you or Integrated Solutions?
Yeah, so we doing a lot more webinars. So you'll see a lot of that coming on board. We'd like to get some training on the way. And we've recently partnered with Employment Hero HRIS system. So we are here to help businesses in their people and human needs in terms of compliance and paperwork that goes with it, making sure that whether it's from a HR processing or making sure that getting paid the right awards or need rostering, that's all included in the system as well. So we'll be educating a lot more people in that space.
Fantastic. So there's going to be a watch this space sticker on your office door then, because there's so much that's going to be coming out of that one. Absolutely. Now, Maya, I can't thank you enough for the time. I mean, from your cultural roots to corporate boardrooms, and you've just really redefined that human resources is just really human relationships at scale. And I like how you define that everything you do from birth till you're older is just literally what you guys have to deal with every single day. So for those that are watching right now, if ever you have struggled with maybe retaining good stuff, wondered how to create a culture, maybe without the coffee machines and the ping pong tables that the new startups are just bringing in as culture, or maybe you want to avoid that HR chat before it leads to you having to bring up a lawyer. I think reaching out to M.E.D.I.A at Integrated Solutions is just the best thing for you to do. I will definitely put all those links in the show notes so that you can get started. And if you are just watching this out of interest and you might not be ready to hire an HR consultant, why don't you share this with somebody who's in your network that has recently hired or is thinking of hiring staff? Maybe M.E.D.I.A will be the go-to person that would actually help them avoid all these other open drawer situations that she has mentioned on them. And don't forget to subscribe to the show, because on the next episode, we're going to be unpacking ideas that could lead you to a happier existence in life, work, and everything else in between. Until then, I want you to remember something. Business is personal, and your people, they're not your property. Bye for now.